Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you can see by the title of today's video, we're gonna get a little spooky today. If you want to find out my personal experience with the paranormal, the only time I've ever experienced it, and maybe some other anecdotes about my sleep paralysis experiences, then please keep on watching. So I want to preface this by saying that I am not very experienced with the paranormal. I don't really discuss it a lot with people. I don't really know that much about it, even besides going about my day-to-day life watching horror movies and things like that and knowing about it from that standpoint, and also just from watching paranormal YouTube channels and stuff like that and watching like their videos on certain events that have happened in their area or in their personal lives. So I don't really know how to explain this because I'm not a skeptic, I very much believe that the spiritual realm and that other layer of reality is real. I think that it's a very valid piece of existence that we just have to come to terms with. If that makes any sense. I'm not a very outwardly spiritual person. I don't know if God exists. I don't know if angels exist. I don't know about any of that stuff, but I definitely feel in my heart and believe with my mind that spirits are real and ghosts are real, and the souls of people who have lived before can definitely impact our physical world as well as our emotional world and have that very poignant influence on us and our reality. That being said, once again, I don't really know if heaven or hell exists. I don't know about purgatory. I don't know about God himself. I don't know about the devil or demons or anything like that, but what I experienced was, on one hand, very traumatic, and on the other hand, just kind of like a bully coming out of the woodwork to just mess with your life a little bit and have you questioning your reality and your safety. So I'll start this off as well by saying that I've never experienced anything paranormal before in my life besides what I said, internet stuff, movies, things like that, but also to be careful what you wish for, because when I had met my significant other, Kevin, I had felt like I want to have a paranormal experience. He was telling me about how he grew up and all of his issues during his childhood that happened to him that were almost not understandable, didn't make sense, and I looked at him and I said, I wish that I could experience something like that. I wish I could be haunted. I wish that I could feel that, which obviously be careful what you wish for, because then I experienced it and it was very horrifying, very traumatizing, but also something that taught me a very big lesson in my life on how to treat the dead or just the spirit world. I don't know if this was a ghost, I don't know if it was a demon, but it definitely was something that wanted to scare me. As some of you know, I have an anxiety problem as well as depression. This just plagued on all of my fears and made my anxiety 10 times worse, made me have a fear of being alone, and also impacted my depression because now I have a deep unsettling fear of death. I think that this is an important video to share for people that may not have experienced anything paranormal but are thinking like, oh, what would it be like? Well, this is what it's like. It's not fun and it can be really traumatizing, like I said, so I'm just gonna go into it. Like I said, my boyfriend Kevin, he had a lot of these traumatizing experiences growing up that include claw marks on his back when he woke up, seeing shadow people as he had sleep paralysis, very frequently seeing a dark figure with a hat on that would come into his room at night and while he was sleeping and having sleep paralysis episode, claw at his back or hurt him or suffocate him to the point that he would pass out and then he would wake up remembering everything vividly. There's that, but there's also events that he told me that were more on the paranormal side. Anytime you bring up something paranormal, sleep paralysis is usually involved in some way, shape, or form, which is what happened to me. So beyond that, my boyfriend also experienced some events such as his entire room shaking and then it stopping when a family member walked down to go grab him for something. And also he lived in a house that had a completely sealed off room. I believe it was sealed off by a bookcase or something or other, and there was just an entire room filled with occult stuff. I won't say what it was, but just stuff that had to deal with death, voodoo, things of that nature, and that was pretty terrifying for him because his room was closest to that room in that previous house that he was living in, so he was pretty much directly connected to that room, which I believe is probably one of the reasons why he's dealing with all this stuff, or dealt with it. So this has been something that follows him from house to house, but just seemingly did not follow us to our apartment, which I'll get into later as well. He also experienced a very strange event. Apparently he woke up in the middle of the night sleepwalking, went into the kitchen, grabbed salt, just regular table salt, and started pouring it into his mouth and eating it. And then his brother, who was awake at the time, went up to him and said, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing?" And Kevin said, "You better back the fuck off or I'm going to fucking kill you." Something to that effect. Definitely with "I'm going to fucking kill you" included in the end of that sentence. Pretty much his brother just determined that he was possessed or something or other had happened. And then when Kevin woke up in the morning, he was in a cold sweat and started drinking gallons of water because of how much the salt had affected his salivary glands, and it made him sick and also made him throw up. So not something that is very common, I feel like, for people who sleepwalk, because sleepwalkers usually do eat something out of the fridge. I've done it before, or at least I've tried to get into the fridge, and they eat something, but never table salt. So that was a very weird experience that I wasn't there for, but Kevin told me about, and also his brother confirmed to me. There have been a bunch of other things that have happened to Kevin throughout his life, and so that obviously turned over to me when I became a new addition into his life. This is where that traumatizing thing began, because Kevin had always said how the things that followed him from house to house to house would try to rattle stuff around the house. So one day I was in Kevin's place. This was his mom's house at the time. We were living there together, or at least I was visiting. I just decided to stay there for a bit and wait till he got home. So I didn't go back to campus, I just stayed there. While I was there, it was in the middle of the day, and all of a sudden there was a bunch of rattling in the kitchen. And I didn't really think too much of it. I had my door wide open, I was on my computer, wasn't really doing much, and it was persistent for a long time, and I thought that it was Kevin's cat. Now, of course, there was thought in the back of my mind, oh, this is probably the ghost or whatever entity that is just shaking things up, because this is really random and it doesn't really make sense for the cat to be doing it, especially for this long. I was very trepidatious. I had a pocket knife on me, so I just kept it open, you know, used it as something that I could defend myself with, possibly. I tried to make it known that I was in the house just in case it was an intruder or something like that, although I never heard the door open, I never heard the backyard door open. It was just an ongoing thing. And when I would go quietly to check on the kitchen, all of a sudden all the noise would stop. It would stop almost when I was halfway towards the kitchen, and then I wouldn't hear it anymore, and then I would get in there and I saw nothing. I didn't even see the cat. I tried to go about my business. I took a shower. I had the door wide open as well. I also had the curtain wide open because I was the only one in the place at the time. So I just kept an eye out, and I was getting soap in my eyes because I was trying not to close my eyes for too long because I was terrified. Part of me still tried to be rational about it and convince myself that nothing was going on, that it was just the cat, it was just an animal, it was the wind, something to just make myself feel better. But then, of course, I'm done with my shower. I don't go back to the kitchen. I go back to Kevin's room. I leave the door open, and then all of a sudden, Kevin's cat comes running in and jumps onto the bed and is with me. Now, this sounds pretty normal, but as I was just saying, I thought the cat was doing it the entire time. Even though I hadn't seen it previously, I thought maybe it was still there, doing it, maybe crawling in the cabinets or something. We know how cats are. Even though I had never seen Kevin's cat do this anyway, I was still thinking maybe there was something that she was doing to cause a stir. So, cat is in my room, and the noise continues. Continues for a while. Finally, I just got so terrified, and the noises were getting louder and louder that I decided to call Kevin. And I started to break down into tears, and I said, there is something going on in here. There's pots and pans rattling for absolutely no reason. The cat's already in the room. Nobody's here. Nobody's home. Nobody's doing anything. And they've just been rattling for hours. And I think I need you to come home. And he said, I got 2 hours until I have to come home. My little sister should be there soon. Just keep the door locked. Just wait it out until I get home. So I was paralyzed, petrified. And so I decided to do what he said. I went to the door and I locked it. Went back onto the bed. Cat, by the way, had no reactions to anything. That's actually very common with cats. They don't really respond too much to paranormal stuff. They might be curious about it. They might look at a wall for too long, you know, as we usually see cats do. But normally it's really dogs who have a very negative, crazy response to the paranormal. paranormal, cats are pretty much just chill about it, so I really had no way of knowing what was going on. Just I knew strongly enough that the cat was upset enough and lonely enough to want to come into the room and be with me, because I didn't really know this cat too well at the time, and it just really wanted to be with me, or at least that's how I interpreted it. I'm in there, I lock the door, and it gets louder and louder and louder. Kevin's little sister still isn't there. The sound was just getting worse and worse and worse. Everything was rattling, and it was awful. It was awful sounding. It just petrified me so much. So then I called Kevin one more time, and I said, listen, it's getting worse and worse and worse, and I'm terrified. And I started bawling my eyes out at this point. And then this is when I heard something. This isn't something that I told Kevin until not even a couple months ago, but while I was on the phone with him, I heard something say something. Clear, distinct voice, male voice, say a full sentence. I don't know to this day what they said. I just know that I heard a male voice groaning, making a clear, distinct sentence. And I don't know what he said. This has been something that's followed me forever. I don't know what he said, but I do know that I did hear him say something. I don't know who it was. Definitely was terrifying. And then as soon as I hung up, it stopped, and then Kevin's little sister came home and everything went back to normal. There was no rattling, there was no problems, there was no voice, it was all gone. That thing, whatever it was, said one distinct sentence to me while I was on the phone, completely distracted, almost like he wanted me to not understand what he said. Just one distinct line, and then that was it. And pretty much everything went all downhill from there. Kevin came home, everything was fine, went about our business. I told him everything that happened again. I didn't tell him I heard someone say something. And then we went into the kitchen, and it was like nothing had even touched anything. I swear I could have heard pots and pans falling, being rattled around so much that possibly would have shifted, but nothing really moved, and nothing at all. And so I was left not knowing what to do. And so we just kind of ignored it. I was terrified when I went to bed that night, but then the next day I was going back to the campus, and I thought that it wouldn't be following me anymore. So this is when another event happened. So I went back to campus. Excuse me if I keep on saying home, because that was like what I considered my home at the time. Now, of course, this is my home, but it's also an apartment. It's not really a house, so sorry. Also sorry if it's getting a little bit dark. I'll try to see if I could brighten it in a bit, but I decided to be in my kitchen because it's really ominous, but also Kevin's playing Apex Legends in the bedroom, and he's really loud, so New Paltz, my school. Get there, and I walk into the room, and everything's normal, except we have a mini fridge in there, and Kevin had recently gotten me flowers, so I had a vase on top of the mini fridge, and all of his flowers there. Now when I get back, completely knocked over. None of the water poured out, a lot of the flowers fell, and I'm not sure why that happened, because I look at the windows, and the windows are open from the top, not the bottom. Like, they're horizontal windows, so they open from the top and the bottom, but these are only opened at the top. So there was no way that there was a gust of wind strong enough coming from the top that would go all the way down to blow my vase down and knock over all my flowers. So that's when I texted my roommate at the time, and I asked her, did this fall before? It's okay if it did and you didn't notice it or you didn't pick it up, I'm fine with that, but I'm just wondering what happened, because nothing broke. The vase didn't break, the flowers were already dying, so it wasn't that big of a loss, and also like the water didn't get out, like I said, so nothing was wet. There's just pretty much leaves everywhere. So I asked her what happened, and she said, when I left, and it wasn't that too much longer ago than you got in, it didn't fall at all. I would have totally picked it up if I saw it. So then I go, this is weird. So I text her and explained to her, like, listen, all this paranormal stuff happened to me yesterday, and I'm in a weird vibe, so I would like an explanation. She was like, no, I had the windows open from the top the entire time, and you know, that's really freaky, but I didn't really do anything. It was just like that. And she was a sweet girl. We never had any problems, we never had any issues, so I completely trusted her and I believed her. So something did this to my flowers. Decided not to really make a muck, didn't want any water spilled anywhere, didn't break my vase, but tipped over this important thing that my boyfriend gave me that I really loved and appreciated and cherished in my little space that I had for myself. That's when I thought to myself, this thing is following me. It doesn't like me now. It is trying to do something to me, and it's trying to startle me. So that's of course when my anxiety started. So yes, this is when my anxiety started going, and I was really convinced that there was some spirit or something following me and trying to mess with me. The last event that I'll mention is the last or second to last time that I encountered this being, because my boyfriend had said that there were a lot of problems with the house since I had left. I think one of those nights he had gotten home from work, and then all of a sudden that he heard, I think, something coming into the house or someone. It was coming from the basement. The dog dog that his brother had started barking crazily. The cat came out and was running around the kitchen, living room, everything, and Kevin was like, what the hell? So he started to load up his gun that he has. He checked downstairs and there was nobody there. He swore that he heard voices and noises coming from down there, from the garage, from everywhere, but he couldn't find any trace of anybody. It looked like someone had come in and then just left. That was really startling to me because I had explained to him what happened with the vase, and so this was just an ongoing issue. I had had my first instance of sleep paralysis. I never really even understood what sleep paralysis was to the paranormal extent until I had met Kevin. I had heard about it. I knew what it was vaguely, but I didn't understand any of the paranormal elements that were associated with it. I didn't really have much of an opinion on it, so Kevin was just telling me everything that had happened with him for sleep paralysis, like all of his experiences, whether they were just benign or they were supernatural. And so I went in it saying, like, I hope that never happens to me. And since this event has only happened, I think, 2 more times, and that was it. And it only happens when I'm terrified. So naturally, that day that I had experienced it, I didn't have any coffee that day, and this was when I had a caffeine addiction. So my head was pounding. I was really stressed out. I had a lot of assignments due. I was also not feeling very well, and so I decided to just take a nap around 4:30, and I had actually gone to take this nap on my stomach. But for whatever reason, in my dream, I was very vividly sitting up with my knees up and my phone in my lap and just on social media. And I was on Tumblr, of course, because if anything demonic is gonna happen, it's gonna be something associated with Tumblr, right? So I was on the app and I was just scrolling through it, and it was very weird because I have crazy dreams, and this was the most normal dream that I've ever had. Those are geese. I promise. Nothing crazy. They're just doing their little V-section, trying to bother people and shit on people's lawns. I promise nothing crazy just happened. It was just geese. Sleep paralysis experience, my first ever one. I was on Tumblr and I was scrolling and I was trying to read a post. It was kind of difficult to read it at first and I didn't understand what it said. And then all of a sudden the text started to change. It started to read like a language that I didn't know, and I started to see like strands of text, you know? It's hard to explain, but sometimes people on Tumblr like to be dicks and like take regular phrases and like stretch them out, mess with the font to make it look like satanic chants, and that's exactly what was happening to the text that I was reading from it. I'm in this dream, I'm reading off of Tumblr, 2 weird things that never happen in a dream, and then all of a sudden the text on my phone starts changing to a satanic chant, and then all of a sudden I started hearing someone saying that chant. I don't know what the words said, I don't know what they mean, but started saying something in tongues pretty much. It was very sibilant, had that kind of snake-like vibe to it. It didn't seem like a language that I had ever known before, so I started hearing it. Kind of if you were in a church and the priest was speaking and it kind of echoed throughout the entire hall. That's what it sounded like. It had that reverberating, deep, monotone vocal that just went throughout the entire room. Meanwhile, I'm in a tiny little dorm room, and then I was just very confused hearing this voice. As soon as he stopped talking, because it was also a male voice again, all of a sudden the room started shaking, and I look up like towards like my roommate's bed, and the room is just completely shaking. It's like an earthquake is happening. I'm looking around and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and all of a sudden I feel like my body is completely stiff. I'm looking and I see my legs, the top of my legs, my knees, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm having sleep paralysis right now. And as I'm trying to break free of this, because your body is completely like paralyzed in a completely metaphorical sense, because your body is not registering that you're awake, but your mind is awake. So I can't move, and then all of a sudden on the top of my knees I see these dark figures coming towards me. I don't know what they were shaped like. They looked like heads and shoulders, like that silhouette at the top of a body, but once again my knees were completely in front of my face, so I have no idea. I assumed from my perspective that it was heads, which my legs were pretty tall, so I can only imagine how tall those beings were. They were approaching me, and the room was still shaking, and I hear this sound keep going, and so I just tried to break free, and I've never tried to do this before, so it was really rough for me. So I start gradually like moving my hands around, trying to make my fists go and trying to flex my fingers, because I feel like that was a good start, and I started to try to flex my toes and move my arms, and all of a sudden I shook myself awake, and I was lying on my stomach, which wasn't how I was in the dream, and I was out of this dream, and all of a sudden I was just like, what just happened? I realized that I was dreaming the entire time, but it did not feel like a dream. dream. It felt like something more dark than that, something more evil. And of course, it was my first sleep paralysis experience, so I was just traumatized. I was horrified by what had happened, what I had seen, what I had felt, and what I had heard. I really couldn't explain it to you. And that was when I was just like, this is just too much. Like, I can't take this anymore. If I have to keep on going to bed feeling afraid for my life, then this ain't it, Chief. I really didn't know what to do at this point. I told Kevin, like, I just want to tell this thing to leave me alone. He was like, you really think that's going to happen? That they're going to listen to you? That whatever this is that has been following me my entire life is going to stop following you? He's very supportive of me. But I can't blame him because this is something that's always hurt him in his life. I can't really expect it to just leave me alone. So the next day is Wednesday when me and Kevin are going to hang out. And so I just explain everything that happened, how afraid I've been, how stressed out I've been from this. And so we get into his place and we start cooking dinner. His brother was explaining to me how the dog didn't want to go down to the basement anymore. That it just wanted to be upstairs and was afraid to go down. And I had an inkling that it had to do with what it probably saw or heard or felt when it was down in the basement when Kevin heard that intruder, which turned out to be nothing, or possibly something supernatural. The dog was probably very affected by this and just didn't want to go downstairs anymore. It completely stayed upstairs. So that's when I got really nervous because I just was like, this is just too much. Like, it's affecting all the people in our lives. So his brother's girlfriend at the time, she's now his wife, she was telling me how she had an experience in the bathroom, how she was brushing her hair, and then all of a sudden a clump of hair just came out, like severe clump of hair, and all of a sudden she was screaming and she was texting her friend, calling her friend, and then she looked and the clump of hair was completely gone. It was out of the bathroom, it wasn't in the garbage can, it wasn't on the floor, it wasn't in the room, it wasn't anywhere. This is what she had told me, and she was living in the basement at the time, and this was like a couple of days after the whole intruder thing happened. There was just so many weird things that were going on with people in this house. I just snapped. I just had a complete mental breakdown. And while we were cooking, I don't know, I just felt something. I felt like something was just watching us. And so I look over because the kitchen goes straight down to the stairs that go to the front door, and then they lead down to the basement as well. So I was in the kitchen, I was by the stove, and I was staring straight, and I was staring at the front door. Now, I wasn't just staring at the front door. I felt like I was staring at the thing that had been bothering me, that had been bothering Kevin, that had been bothering everybody. I felt like I was staring right at it into its soul. I didn't see anything, but I just knew that I was staring at something or someone. And so I gazed at them. I stared with complete intensity and I started screaming in my head, don't fucking bother me anymore. Do not bother Kevin. Do not bother anybody in this house. You leave and you leave us alone. And I just kept on going on from there. I was screaming this in my head. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew that the thing that I was staring at knew what I was saying. I never felt so strongly that something was there and that I could feel it and that it was there. Because my intuition is pretty shitty. I'll just be honest, you know? I don't really have good intuition. I don't know when I could feel something in the air, feel something's aura. I'm really bad with that. I don't know what's a better decision to make than another. I'm not really good with that kind of stuff. I have zero intuition, zero common sense. But for whatever reason, I just felt like I needed to give this a shot. I feel that something is there. I need to yell at it and tell it to leave us alone. I especially told it to leave me alone because it didn't own me. Fuck off, pretty much. So I was yelling at it. Don't know if it was a ghost, a demon, who it was, where it was, but it was affecting my life, so I told it to fuck off. And then my gaze broke and I kept cooking. Everything goes fine. And then the dog walks and it goes down to the basement like nothing had ever happened. It felt like a complete weight had just been lifted off of me. Felt like everything was fine again. I didn't feel like a sense of dread in there. And since that day, from my understanding, nobody has ever experienced anything evil or demonic in that house again. Not saying that it was because of me, but I definitely think that me yelling at it had some sort of an impact on it because it never bothered anybody again. It has not followed us to our apartment, and this is a being that has followed Kevin from house to house to house. It has not bothered anybody who lives there now. Any of Kevin's family, nothing has ever happened. There has been no rattling in the kitchen. There's been no voices. There's been no sleep paralysis. Even though Kevin does have paralysis sometimes, he hasn't had it with any demons or figures. I only had it one other time myself, and that was it. The other time that I had sleep paralysis, there were no demons involved, and nothing has ever happened again. And I am very proud to say I've never experienced any other paranormal situations since then. So yeah, I think this completes my story. I never researched this, I never looked it up, I never tried to figure out what this thing was that was hurting Kevin throughout his life. I don't know if it was the same thing that was hurting him throughout his entire life, but definitely was something evil that didn't have Kevin's best interest at heart, and it was not of love and light. It was something bad and toxic that was trying to affect me as well. And it did. It had a really significant effect on my anxiety, my depression, just my everyday state of being. I'm still afraid to be alone. I blast the TV when I'm here all by myself. I wake up late so that it's like less time where I have to be alone without Kevin. You know, it's just something that has completely followed me. I don't know what it's like to enjoy being all by myself and not feel like there's something in the corner of the room staring at me. And this is just my life now. Even though nothing bad has ever happened since then, I still have one eye over my shoulders at all times looking out. I am a lot more afraid now than I ever was about paranormal activity, supernatural, spiritual beings. That is it for this video. It's a little bit of a different pace, but I just wanted to do something a little bit different for my channel and kind of just get this off my chest because I don't think a lot of people know about it. So I just wanted to document this, wanted to let you guys know a little bit more of a facet of my life. Hope you guys liked my kitchen. Hope you guys like this lighting. And yeah, we're gonna try to stick with my schedule again. I apologize for my last video being out so late. That was not the intention. Things happened, but hopefully now we could get back on a schedule and that YouTube doesn't hate me and recognizes my algorithm. That was Kevin turning on a light. Anyway, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and also give this video a thumbs up if you did like it, if you enjoyed me talking about my paranormal experiences, or even if you want to hear more about these, because I'm sure Kevin has a ton of stories and I could bring him onto my channel to discuss them if he wants to. But yeah, leave a comment talking about any paranormal experiences that you had, maybe something similar to what I went through. I'd be happy to read it. I love that stuff. Yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.